Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. And our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable or transferable business value, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that is sellable and then help you exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. And much of what we talk about here pertains to building or accelerating the value of your business. And though also we talk about how to protect the value of your business. It's not enough to focus on revenue growth and profitability, as fun as that is, as a business owner who wants to exit eventually and successfully. You also have to continually manage risk and protect the value of the business and the health of your organization. And, with ever changing times that we live in, the risk to be managed are continually changing as well. And keeping up with these changing risks can be tough, particularly when there is the need to focus on things like revenue growth and profitability. So we try to provide some help throughout the course of the year in doing that. And that's what we're going to focus on today in this episode, and actually one or two more episodes here as we start the new year here in the first quarter. So our topic today is forecasted risk for 2024 and beyond, and Walter's going to introduce our guest today.
Thanks, Pat. I have the privilege of introducing Melissa Musser, who I guess I get to introduce her. I never really get to do this. This is really exciting for me. But I guess it's because Melissa is actually one of my partners at GRF CPAs.
Right.
So Melissa approached us. I couldn't even tell you when. It's been quite a few years, with the idea of joining the firm and establishing a risk advisory service group within the firm. So we jumped at the chance to get her, and she has done a fantastic job of really growing that group.
Yeah.
And more importantly, really bringing a very needed service to our client base.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad and proud to introduce Melissa. Let me just give you a little bit of background on what her group does. And I'm not going to pretend to understand most of this stuff, but I can at least read what Pat has written down. So Melissa and her team deliver comprehensive risk-based assessments to help organizations respond to strategic, financial, compliance, operational, and IT risks. Her expertise includes establishing, maintaining, and optimizing internal controls, compliance, enterprise risk management systems, or ERM, as techies like me like to refer to it, and cybersecurity programs. Melissa or someone else from her team joins us annually to discuss forecasted risks. I think, Melissa, this might be your third or fourth time joining us. I think we're always look forward to this. So welcome aboard.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start us off. There's groups that research everything in this world. So I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming there's a group out there, at least one, that kind of contacts business owners and says, what are you worried about? So if that's true, can you share with us the results of any type of survey or anything of that nature?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. You know what? We do that in the fall, actually. In addition to the crystal ball that, of course, we look into, we scour the internet and look for surveys. All types of surveys are done. And so actually we compile a large group of them, and my team go through them, and we kind of look to see, is there some consistency here? Some of them may be more focused to certain industries. Some of them are more focused to certain regions of the world and whatnot. But I do have one in particular. I am the past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors, so I do love internal auditors, and I like their perspective. So one of the reports I like to reference, because I think it's pretty comprehensive, is the Risk in Focus report by the Institute of Internal Auditors. So you can Google that or whatnot. It's there for you to download. They'll probably just ask you for your contact information if you want to look at it. But they do it by region of the world. So if you want to look at North America, or maybe you have operations in other countries or you're looking to expand or whatnot, you can see the top risks from all over. But there is like a top 5 global risks, right? And so I'll just tell you the top 5. It actually goes into more detail than that. But number 1 is cybersecurity. And that was pretty much the top risk across the globe, right? And it's expected to stay the top risk. And it was the top risk by a landslide, right? So cybersecurity, it's a perennial risk. Next one, and that's been climbing the charts, is human capital talent management. And that started really bubbling up in 2018, and COVID really threw that into overdrive. And there's a lot of work being done there, from just retaining folks to, you know, just DEI initiatives. I mean, there's just all different types of, you know, things within that realm. And that's number 2. Number 3 is business continuity, right? And that could mean, you know, a lot of different things, from just preparing for natural disasters, pandemics, IT failures, and then, you know, supply chain disruptions, which, you know, it's funny, we experienced all those things during the pandemic, it seems like. So yeah, we really kind of, we know the crunch. It's not something pretend anymore, right? We've experienced these things. They're real. And then there's, you know, regulatory change. There's a lot of things going on with regulatory risk. Did you know that there are more elections this year than I think any other time in history? I think there's more elections going on in the globe right now. I think half of the US population is going to be in some sort of election. So there may be a lot of flux going on. So I think that's kind of a fascinating statistic. And then the last one is a newer emerging one, and that's digital disruption. Also not a surprise, I guess. I'm sure you guys have played around with ChatGPT, maybe not, but digital disruption. So that's kind of a new one to the list.
So which one should we start with? Should we start at the top of the list and see how far we get today? We may have to kind of have you back, Melissa.
Well, you know, I think I'd love to talk, I'm ready to talk about them all. And actually, there's another, so part of the survey actually went on to discuss what are the emerging risks that we need to think about in the next 3 years, right? And so it's all the same risks. Digital disruption bumps up to number 2. So I guess maybe let's talk a little bit about that, because there's cybersecurity implications with that, right?
Okay,
but the new player to the risk is climate change. And I guess I wouldn't mind talking just briefly about that, just because it's just kind of a new thing and it's kind of going around. People are talking about it. I know ESG and this and that, but as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions, I know that government contractors are now required in FAR to disclose whether or not they track it. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, that's just something else that you're going to see kind of bubbling up a little bit. But hey, I'm ready to talk about whatever you guys.
Well, no, you start where you think we should start, and then we're going to have questions.
All right. Okay. Well, you know, cybersecurity is number 1, right? So I guess we should talk about that. You'll hear a term called WISP, right? You need to have a written information security policy. So make sure you have that, right? I mean, if you don't have that, that's a major problem that you need to demonstrate you've done some kind of due diligence. Even if you outsource your IT to a third party, they don't maintain your information security policy. You do. Okay. So please, you know, at a minimum, do that.
Say that again. Say that again.
An information security policy, a WISP. You need your own written information security policy for your organization. Even if you outsource to a third party managed service provider, right? They don't maintain your own policy, right? So let's say you have an account, you know, you have a bookkeeper, an outside bookkeeper, right? But can you imagine not having your own accounting policies? Think about that. You wouldn't expect your outsourced third party. I mean, they may help you design it, but they're still your accounting policies. You need to have your own book of policies, right? An IT policy needs to be one of those policies. So I always like to compare. I'm a CPA. I can't help myself. I always compare everything to like an accounting thing, something related to accounting. It just makes sense because it's the same concepts.
That is interesting. So that's something you could help people draft?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I assume we have stuff like that, right? You know, it's interesting, Pat, because I think back to some due diligence engagements we've had recently, and I don't remember anyone asking for that. So I guess they're a little bit behind the curve, but that's definitely going to become important, I'm sure.
Well, that's why we have these conversations at least annually. Yeah, because I don't know that business owners a lot of times that we work with, Melissa, they think, I bet you, smart money would be on a bet that they think that the third-party vendor is maintaining their written
Yep.
information security.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's a big hurdle. We're really trying to, beat the drum on letting folks know that. Because it is, and it can be, I mean, if for some reason, there is a cyber breach, it can be seen as negligence. And I think now with, if you're gonna get some level of cyber insurance, they're gonna be asking for that.
Okay,
So maybe, some clients don't have that, so it's just a good idea to get something documented. Absolutely.
have you noticed that if they do insure, and they almost always do, the insurer does require or request
Yes,
okay, so someone's providing it then at that point.
yes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Continue.
Yeah, so those are, the basics within there, and within that is, third-party risk management, right? So you really understanding how your third parties can, affect your cybersecurity is also a pretty big area. Whether you have your accounting system in the cloud, so many things are going to third parties. So third party of risk management is a big element of, cybersecurity. Obviously phishing, everyone is wanting to click links and stuff. So basic cybersecurity, phishing and training, that is also something that my team, I think you had Darren on last year. They definitely help with that. They say if you don't have a lot of money, that's the best investment. It's just educating your employees. Not to click the links, not to wire transfer money, not to click on the gift card or to do any of those things, and to really be ready. So that's the best investment. And
Mhm.
again, cyber insurance, they've caught on to this, and they're a lot of times asking for that as well, because it is truly, an affordable investment that actually works. Because it doesn't matter how much money you spend in cyber, if someone clicks a link, they're in.
Okay, so if a listener out there doesn't have insurance, first off, they should probably get insurance because that helps manage the risk. But in that process of getting the insurance, the carrier is going to have this checklist that you're going through, that they're going to be asking for these things that you're talking about, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it's probably going to help with your premiums. So you're
Mhm.
going to save money. There's an ROI on that, right? So, if you do some basic blocking and tackling, cyber insurance is going to be more affordable, or you may, and if you're not doing that, you may not get coverage.
Hey, Melissa, let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
We
go ahead.
use that know before.
Yep.
At GRF, we have this, and Melissa can describe better than I can, but probably once a month or once every 2 months, we get an email from IT saying, do your know before training.
Yes.
And it's some guy who was like famous for being the world's biggest hacker or something. But
Yes.
it's really, and it's like 15 to a half hour little video, interactive video, and it's really great. I mean, as far as pointing out phishing vulnerabilities and stuff like that, I find it really helpful. Do you know if that's a very expensive program, Melissa? You have any idea what that costs?
No, it's not expensive. And one of the things, so like my team will do is if you really can't manage that on your own, let's say, Darren or any of the folks on my team will actually help manage it for you, report back to you on how many people have taken the training, sign people up for training, but then also design and execute the phishing tests. So
Okay.
because if they fail the phishing test, then they have to do more training, and then we report back to management on that. And the phishing, you got to train them, right? But the phishing test is really eye-opening. And it gets people, when you fail a phishing test, you're kind of on the alert after that. You're like, I'm not going to fail another phishing test and get publicly embarrassed at my company, So yeah, no, it's relatively affordable.
Okay.
For that type of service. It would depend on the number of employees.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Melissa, the things you're mentioning here, these first few things, and we just got started. And back to the insurance company. The insurance company are going to ask about these things when the application is made for the insurance. But they're not going to, or are they? Like annually going to ask you these things, or are they just going to ask you when you're applying for the insurance?
That's a good question. I would imagine they would want to, or when you're renewing.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
Renewal time. Yeah.
Yeah. They're also doing a scan on you, right? An external scan. And that's something that we do as well. It's an open source scan. And so it's always a good idea to get your, you don't, if your insurance company scans you and you get a low score, that's an issue. So we also
You're
provide
gonna
those
get a
things.
higher premium.
Yes, so we also provide those scans. It's almost like getting your credit checked, it's like a credit score. So we can provide that score. We can actually work with you to up your score, so that when you are going back for renewal, you can be an A, right? And that's going to help you too. So there is some strategy around that. And again, the cyber scans, these open source cyber scans, are relatively affordable. We do have pricing on our website, for these different types of services. So.
Mhm. Okay, good. Keep going. This is great.
Yeah, great. So I don't know if we want to, keep talking about cyber, or, I did want to talk a little bit about transformation, I guess, digital transformation. So we've heard a lot about AI, right? And then this kind of newer term called generative AI, which is AI that generates content, right? So that's a simple way to explain it, right? It generates something, which is pretty fascinating. And then you got ChatGPT, which is a large language model, right? And it is a type of generative AI. And so that's a really big thing. So I was looking, so again, we're going through our crystal ball surveying things. I found this MIT survey. It's called The Great Acceleration, and CIO Perspectives on Generative AI. And one of their professors, Michael Carbon, said that he can't think of anything more powerful since the desktop computer. That's how big this is. And they did the survey, and the forecast of adoption by 2025, 43% of finance departments will use AI as a critical part of the function. 49% of IT will use AI as a critical part of the function. Marketing, 20%, sales, 24%, supply manufacturing, 38%, HR, 27%. You see, it's becoming a critical part of the function. So that's forecasted. That's why you saw digital disruption go up. And so we have to be organized. So what I'm going to say to your business owners is, we were disrupted during COVID, right? We might as well just be open to continually being disrupted at this point. We need to harness the chaos of continuous change. So we need to be innovative, right? We need to be doing the same thing, but better. We need to be open to being that, but we also need to be open to disruption. So that's doing new things that make the old things completely obsolete. We need to be ready to be disrupted. So there's going to be a lot of change in that area. And I just wanted to kind of focus a little bit about that. Now, this digital disruption will introduce more cybersecurity threats, unfortunately, if we're not really paying attention. We need to be making sure we're setting up the systems appropriately. And so there's some risk along with that. But I do think there's tremendous benefit. And then going back to the whole talent thing, right? There's this talent management crisis. Really upskilling our employees is going to be important, so that they can adapt with the technology, so that they're not necessarily losing their jobs and being replaced. But we do need to look at those kind of tasks. But is there something that they could be doing? Can we be helping them and educating them or upskilling them into new, better positions that are going to attract them to the organization? I know I love GRF because we are always, embracing and, investing in the latest technology.
Yeah.
So now you have this risk, right? Like, digital transformation is a risk, but now we've made it an asset because we do invest in it, and now people want to work for us. And you know what I mean? So now we've made a risk an asset as part of our strategic plan. So whenever you're doing a strategy for the year, it's always important to think about, well, what are my risks? And are there any risks that I can turn over on their head and make them an asset? So if cyber is a big risk, why don't we be the best in cybersecurity? You know what I mean? Like, let's flip it on its head and make it an asset. That same goes for like EI or ESG. Some organizations in certain industries want to flip that on its head and be the best, put it on their website, all those kind of different considerations.
Okay, but help me to better understand what you just said. Let's say it's a roofing company that we're dealing with. How can they take cyber and make it an asset and turn it on their head? Or is that what you were talking about, or something different?
I think a roofing company would need to look at their top risks and look at their supply chain and look at who they're selling to, right? So they have to look at their risks. So when I think roofing, it kind of depends on who their customers are. Like if it's, is it the government? So you got to think about what are the big risks? Is ESG, is sustainably sourcing the wood or the, is that important to your customers? So, you're actually bringing me to the next thing that we're going to be hearing more about, our ESG materiality assessments, because it used to be shareholder capitalism, right? Where we need to grow revenue for the shareholders, right? But with this new kind of concept of ESG, it's now considered stakeholder capitalism. It's kind of a new word. So who are all the stakeholders to this roofing company? What communities are they serving? Who are their suppliers? And all those different kinds of questions. And then you ask and you think about what's important to them, right? What's important to them, and then what's important to us, and marrying that together. So I don't know the answer to that, but it could be ESG. Are the clientele sensitive? Is there a cybersecurity risk there? Are they having a hard time getting the talent to do the jobs? So it would kind of depend. Whatever their top risks are, they could maybe turn it on their head, and maybe they'll get more work from the government if they are sustainable. And maybe that's a strategy. Maybe they do need to start tracking their greenhouse gas emissions and how much travel, what are they doing? How are they sourcing things? And really flip that on its head and make it an asset, because it's growing in importance. So it's something to think about. And I guess that's what I was referring to. So every organization is going to have a little bit of a different feel to that, but being in front of it is the suggestion. So that's why it's important to look at your overall risk.
Got it. Okay, good. Got it. Thank you. Continue.
Okay. Okay, great. So then I talked a little, so ESG, right? And that's climate change is growing, and you're going to hear this terminology, but you're going to hear people kind of maybe back away from that terminology, but they're all still talking about the same thing. So I'm just going to say the word, right? ESG. So environmental, we're talking about the E, and you're going to see a lot more focus because the government wants to go to net zero, and we need to start tracking the greenhouse gas emissions, right? And then there's the S piece. You're going to see a lot. And that, and again, this concept has been around for literal decades. This is not new at all. It's been around forever, so the social aspect, health and safety, all these important things, privacy of sensitive information, all that kind of great stuff. DEI has risen as a priority. So you'll see some folks need to be focusing on DEI. And then you got the governance aspect, which is also very important, making sure that you have good conflicts of interest. So that roofing company, where are they getting the bids? Are there any conflicts of interest? All those kinds of important things to think about. Are there whistleblowers? Is fraud a concern? Is there a way to report the fraud? So that all falls in the governance aspect of ESG. So, but to talk more about the E part, which this is a little bit newer. So they're asking folks. And this is called carbon accounting, which is why us CPAs are kind of jumping into the mix because it really is like a type of accounting. It's called scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emission tracking. I know it. So basically, scope 1 emissions are direct emissions owned or controlled by the organization, such as like a fleet of cars, or let's say they bring their own generator on site. That's a scope 1 type of emission, and really kind of starting to track that and inventory that, right? Scope 1. Scope 2 are indirect emissions that rely on the production of energy. For example, like the building, like if you're renting a building, and the energy associated with that. And then the scope 3 emissions are like, for example, if an organization, it's emissions not directly produced by the organization, but it's indirectly linked to activity. So let's say that an organization has a conference and a bunch of people have to fly to the conference and to travel to it, you have generated that emission, right? They want organizations to kind of figure out what is our footprint. Because it used to, you could do scope 1 and 2 and then just transfer 3 to someone else, not my problem. But the truth of the matter is you're generating that. You're generating. So they're saying we want you to calculate it all and then come up with a plan on how to reduce that potentially, or do some carbon offsets. But at a minimum, just have an idea of what your footprint is. And actually, you might have a really good footprint. And that's something that you may want to talk about. You may want to put that on your website. You don't want to greenwash, that's the bad thing where you try to spin something to sound better than it really is. You'll want to make sure it's like auditable information that you can verify and prove. There's already been some organizations that's gotten in trouble for saying they sustainably source things when they, in reality, they don't. And there's lawsuits that can be associated with that. But there's also some potential gain to being able to do that. So that's going to be kind of a newer concept that you're going to be seeing out there.
Okay, so let's say you, Melissa, owned a business that ESG even more applied to, and you were thinking of selling it within 5 to 10 years. And not just ESG, but other things you're talking about too, cyber, and you wanted to get as much money as you could, knowing what you know, doing the work that you do, dealing with the regulations, growing regulations and compliance and all like that. And you want to maximize value, but you're limited in your resources as to what you can focus on too in the next 5 to 10 years.
And you're starting with having done nothing. So you're starting from ground zero.
Right. What are you going to be most focused on in order to, in differentiating yourself in the market and selling your business to, you know, either private equity or a strategic buyer?
So I think that gets back to this materiality assessment. So ESG does include cyber. You know what I mean? So if you don't do good in cyber, that lowers your governance, but then it also could affect your social if somehow your employees or, you know, customers or something, private information gets taken and compromised. Now you've affected the social aspect. So really everything falls under ESG in some way or another. The difference with ESG, which I do ERM, so I'm always thinking about enterprise risk management. Typically when we plot on a heat map, we're thinking likelihood and impact. So what's the most likely and impactful thing that could happen? Let me mitigate that. But with ESG, it's actually comparing what do our stakeholders value versus what we value, and let's plot that out. So when you're looking to sell, it's important now to kind of like, again, we're going from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. We're gonna think, what is the community we work in and serve? What do our employees want from us so that we can retain talent? You know, what do they find most valuable? Cybersecurity and privacy a big concern? It depends on where you're working. You know, there could be very sensitive information. You have very sensitive clientele and whatnot, but maybe not. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't deal with a lot of sensitive information, and cybersecurity isn't your number one risk. You've done some of the basics. You have a written information security policy. You know what I mean? But that's maybe not your number one thing you need to think about. So again, I go back to doing this ESG materiality assessment. We're really kind of getting and thinking about what is it our stakeholders value, what do we value, and then kind of come up with a roadmap on what are those things we need to tackle first from that perspective, which could be different for a lot of different organizations. But going back to my top 5 that I talked about, I guarantee you it's going to be one of those top 5 are going to be probably in your top 2, if you know what I'm saying. It's going to be one of those different things. It's going to be things to focus on are probably going to be cybersecurity, human capital, business continuity, should disaster strike, some type of regulatory change that's going to happen, that's going to affect you, or some kind of digital disruption where you're going to need to invest in some better technology, right? It's probably going to be one of those. I don't know which your number 1 is. It's probably one of those that you're going to need to think about.
Pat, you know, something that just dawned on me, you know, part of the answer to your question might depend on your exit path, because I'm thinking, you know, if you're going to get absorbed by a PE or a large third-party company, they're going to be more concerned about ESG than if you're just transferring to the insiders. They're going to be most concerned about cybersecurity and stuff like that. But if you're looking to be, you know, playing with the bigger boys, yeah, I think you're going to have to really, like Melissa's pointing out, really have looked at ESG seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And Melissa, you're helping owners to assess with the CSG materiality assessment. Is that what you call it? What's CSG? What does CSG stand for again?
ESG materiality.
Oh,
assessment.
ESG. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know.
So you're comparing the stakeholders to your organization and then kind of merging those two together to figure out your strategy.
Okay.
That's a really smart way to move. And maybe the environmental greenhouse gas is not, you know what I mean? it could be social, it could be diversity, it could be governance. You might need to implement some really good compliance or anti-bribery or different. It depends on your industry, but there may be a few things that you're going to need to focus on more if you're looking to go public company. I've seen folks do Sarbanes-Oxley light, where it's like they have, they don't necessarily, they'll test internal controls, right? Because public companies want to make sure you have good internal controls. Well, if that's the case, you may want to start identifying what are my key controls and, really laying that out so that the organization can feel comfortable about that. So yeah, and I would consider them a stakeholder, right? Somebody that was looking to acquire you, right? It could be, a part of that ESG assessment because you're considering what would they want too, but not just them, but the community and the employees and, all the different your supply chain. What do all they want to see from you? What are they asking for you? Like say when you're looking to do business with someone, we're seeing it, folks will be asking us, tell me your diversity metrics, tell me, give us your sustainability policy. I'm already seeing it for us to win clients. They're asking us for this information. So what are your third parties or employees asking you for? They're going to be the ones pressuring you possibly as well. So opening that communication up and seeing what they're asking for your clients, the people we're talking to today probably are already going to ask some of these questions and they need to take it seriously.
Yeah. So Pat, on this topic, what do we have coming up? We have Mac coming in twice, right? Is this going to be a continuation of what we're doing with Melissa or something different?
Yeah, well, we're going to game plan that a little further. We've got Mac coming in who works with you.
Yeah.
Melissa, and talking about, I think, technology and probably, I think, some of what you're talking about today in addition.
Yes, he is helping lead a lot of our digital transformation initiatives for our clients. So, before you implement new technology, you really want to do a good current state because the technology is not going to necessarily fix all your problems, right? You got to really look at your staffing, your organization, your key controls and whatnot. Then pick out the technology from there. So yes, he's really excellent. And, Mac, he's a CPA, he's a CISA certified information system auditor, he's a certified fraud examiner. I mean, you're really going to get everything in one person. So ask him anything you want. So yeah, he's great.
Mac's the one guy in the firm I really don't like because he has more initials after his name than I do.
I know. He said he's going to start just taking him off. It's getting to be too much because he's actually just earned evaluation credential too, Walter. So yeah, he's like, I just can't. It's just too much.
Yeah.
So to become a member of the Institution of Internal Auditors, you have to prove that you're more boring than a typical auditor?
Yeah, I know. It's a competition. Yeah. You know what? They're just like CPAs. They take a 4-part exam. But new now is that they did a CPA challenge exam where you only have to take one test to become a CIA. So I recently became a certified internal auditor as well. They now opened it up for CPAs. So yeah.
And that's now the exciting, exploding area. So they're now the cool guys.
They've really done a good job. And they're coming out with some great, there's certifications in ESG. So they're ESG auditing. So they're really staying on top of things as far as giving, helping us get certifications and ramped up to really help our clients. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
That's really cool. So Pat, I'm thinking maybe we need to bring Melissa back after we go through our sessions with Mac, possibly, but you'll figure it all out. Yeah. But I think we've had a lot of information for today.
Yes,
it is. And we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, I know. That's what blows me away.
Okay, Melissa, please, for listeners, and most of our listeners have businesses that are 50 million or under in revenue. That we're talking to, if you were going to just give them 3 quick next steps based on what we've talked about today, what would those 3 next steps be?
Sure. I mean, whenever if you're doing a strategic plan, some kind of strategy, right? Annually, I would say, let's always think of when you're doing that, you're supposed to kind of do a SWOT analysis. What are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? And so what are your risks? And I think folks forget to do a really good risk assessment. But if we could also add, the consideration of a stakeholder into that, and then kind of come up with your plan and then design things around that. But written information security policies are are
Mhm.
very important. So I would talk about that as well, but really looking at your strategy. And I would imagine some sort of digital transformation is in your horizon over the next 3 years. So think about ways during that risk assessment or that strategy, where can you incorporate some technology into that? So those would be my recommendations.
Okay, good. So in closing, is there anything you want to promote? And then if you want to provide contact information, please do that too.
Yeah, so my name is Melissa Musser, and you can find us on our website at grfcpas.com, and you can scroll down to our services, and you'll see all these wonderful risk and advisory services that we offer. It's internal audit, fraud, you'll just see it all there. Cybersecurity, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and my team. We're fun to work with. We love to talk risk, and we would love to help you guys out.
Excellent. All right, Melissa. Thanks for coming back and visiting with us again. We'll have you back again soon, and we're going to have Mac on here real quick from.
Thanks, Melissa.
And so, listeners, if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, let's say you don't know what you want to do. This is a typical client for us. You know you're going to exit, 100% sure you're going to exit. You don't know how you want to do it. Sale to third party, sale to insiders, ESOP, transfer to kids. You don't know, and you need help figuring that out and then putting the plan in place to make it happen. Reach out. You can reach Walter at 301-951-9090. And you can reach me at 301-859-0860. You can also access resources, as Melissa just said a few minutes ago, at grfcpa.com and nslp.com. Thank you. As always, thank you for listening. And until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial signing off.